Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking into something that I think a lot of our listeners are really interested in learning more about, and that is mindfulness at work.
Okay.
We've got a really great audio lecture lined up for this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's called Mindfulness Part 004.mp3.
Oh, good.
And, I think there's going to be some seriously useful stuff in here.
Yeah.
We're talking about, how to actually apply these mindfulness practices to your daily grind, boost your productivity, and, maybe even come up with some game-changing innovations.
Yeah. And what's really great about it is this isn't just for creative types or those already, deep into meditation. We're seeing these benefits across the board.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Managers, salespeople, engineers, you name it.
Wow.
Flexibility, productivity, innovation, leadership skills, they all get a boost from incorporating mindfulness.
Okay. That's a pretty impressive list of potential benefits.
Right.
But I'm curious, how does mindfulness actually lead to all of that? I mean, just sitting and breathing doesn't magically transform you into a superstar employee, right?
Right. There's more to it than just, taking a few deep breaths.
Right.
One of the key concepts that this lecture dives into is this idea of welcoming the glitch.
Welcoming the glitch.
Yeah, okay. You might remember that study where participants were given this nonsensical memo that said, only return this memo immediately.
Oh, yeah. That's the one where they were just basically on autopilot.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to admit, I can totally see myself doing the same thing.
Yeah.
How many times have I missed typos or crucial details
Eh.
because I was just rushing through things?
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is how mindfulness can actually help us break free from those automatic responses.
Okay.
It trains our brains to see deviations from the norm, like that strange memo, as opportunities to pause, question, and potentially catch those errors.
Oh.
Who knows, maybe even spark a brand new idea in the process.
So instead of viewing those glitches as setbacks or annoyances, we start to see them as valuable insights or opportunities for growth.
Exactly.
I like that.
And this isn't just about spotting errors.
Okay.
Mindfulness can also help tap into hidden reserves of energy and focus.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever experienced that second wind phenomenon?
You mean when you think you're completely drained,
Exactly.
but then something happens and you suddenly have this burst of energy?
Exactly. There was a study where researchers had people work on tasks until they felt mentally exhausted.
Okay.
Then simply by changing the context of the task, like having them redraw a picture they'd just completed but with a different color palette,
Oh,
they found renewed energy.
that's interesting. But I'm curious, how was this study actually conducted?
Sure.
Do they measure things like brain activity or hormone levels to see what was actually happening when people experienced that second wind?
That's a great question. And yes, they did use physiological measures like heart rate variability and EEG readings
Wow.
to track participant states of fatigue and alertness.
Okay.
What they found was that even though people subjectively felt exhausted, their brains were actually showing signs of renewed activity and engagement when they switched to a slightly different task.
So it's not just a subjective feeling.
Right.
There's a real physiological shift happening.
Exactly.
That makes me think about, those times when I'm feeling burnt out from hours of writing.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of pushing through the fatigue, I should try switching gears for a bit.
Yeah.
Like going for a walk or listening to music to see if that helps to spark a second wind.
That's a great application of the concept.
I like it.
And it leads us to another fascinating point.
Okay.
How mindfulness can boost innovation.
Well, speaking of innovation.
Yes,
Yeah. Wasn't he feeling like a failure because he could never complete a track?
exactly. But what he discovered was that his true strength lay in composing those initial themes and melodies. By reframing his problem and acknowledging his unique ability, he ended up collaborating with someone who excelled at fleshing out the details and arrangements.
Okay.
Together, they became an incredibly productive duo.
That's a great example of how a simple shift in perspective can lead to a breakthrough.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing this relates back to mindfulness, right?
Absolutely. Mindfulness practices like seeking multiple perspectives and learning to tolerate uncertainty play a huge role in fostering innovative thinking.
Tolerating uncertainty in the workplace, though,
Yeah,
that seems counterintuitive.
I know.
Don't most organizations value decisiveness and appearing confident above all else?
That's true. But there's interesting research suggesting that leaders who express what's called confident uncertainty actually foster more creativity and initiative in their teams.
Confident uncertainty.
Yeah,
That sounds almost like a paradox.
it is a bit.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Sure.
How does a leader express that kind of uncertainty in a way that doesn't undermine their authority?
Think of it this way. When a leader acknowledges they don't have all the answers, it creates space for their team to step up, ask questions, take risks, and contribute their own ideas and solutions.
Okay.
Instead of pretending to be an all-knowing expert,
Right.
a leader who embraces confident uncertainty empowers their team to become active participants in the problem-solving process.
I see.
They might say things like, I'm not sure what the best approach is here, but I'm confident we can figure it out together if we explore all the options.
Okay.
Or, I'm open to hearing different perspectives on this, even if they challenge my initial assumptions.
That makes a lot more sense.
Good.
It's about fostering a culture of collaboration and open communication,
Exactly.
where it's okay to not have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's about creating a space where people feel comfortable speaking up and sharing their ideas,
Right.
even if they're not entirely sure of themselves.
Exactly.
I like that. So if I'm stuck on a problem at work, instead of trying to force a solution,
Right.
it might be more helpful to acknowledge the uncertainty
Right.
and explore different possibilities with my team.
Precisely. And that can lead to some truly innovative and unexpected breakthroughs.
That's what we like.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another area where mindfulness can be incredibly valuable:
Okay.
combating burnout.
Burnout is something I think a lot of people struggle with,
Absolutely.
especially in today's always-on work culture.
Yes.
But I'm curious, how can mindfulness actually help with something that feels so systemic and overwhelming?
That's a great question, and one that this lecture addresses head on.
Okay.
Burnout often stems from feeling overwhelmed and powerless.
Yeah.
Like you're just reacting to external demands rather than being in control of your own work.
Feel that.
Mindfulness can help us combat this by shifting our mindsets and restoring a sense of agency.
So instead of getting caught up in the chaos and feeling like we're just constantly putting out fires,
Right.
mindfulness helps us step back, assess the situation, and make conscious choices about how we want to respond.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
There's a compelling example from this lecture about a nursing home that implemented mindfulness training for their staff.
Okay.
They saw a significant reduction in staff turnover after the training.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
What exactly was it about the mindfulness training that had such a positive impact on the staff?
Sure.
Did they talk about specific techniques they were using?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
One key aspect of the training was helping the staff reframe their perceptions of their work.
Okay.
They were encouraged to identify moments where they felt stressed or overwhelmed,
Yeah.
and then explore alternative ways of approaching those situations.
Oh.
For example, they realized that many of the rigid rules and routines they were following were actually based on assumptions rather than facts.
Interesting. So instead of blindly following procedures,
Right.
they started to question things and look for more mindful solutions
Exactly.
that better aligned with their own values and the needs of the residents.
Exactly. By doing so, they regained a sense of control over their work and found renewed purpose in what they were doing.
Wow.
This, in turn, led to greater job satisfaction and a reduced desire to leave.
That's a powerful example of how mindfulness can transform not just our individual experience of work,
Right.
but also the entire culture of a workplace.
Yeah.
It's not just about feeling better individually.
Right.
It's about creating a more supportive and sustainable environment for everyone.
Absolutely. And this idea of challenging assumptions and finding new perspectives leads us to another intriguing concept:
Okay, hit me.
decreasing prejudice by increasing discrimination.
Wait, what?
I know it sounds a little crazy.
Increasing discrimination.
Right.
That sounds counterintuitive, to say the least.
I know. It sounds a bit paradoxical, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
How can increasing discrimination possibly lead to a reduction in prejudice?
I know. The idea here isn't about promoting actual discrimination in the harmful sense.
Okay.
It's about challenging the broad stereotypical categories we often use to define people, and instead making more specific distinctions.
Okay, I'm listening. Can you give an example of what you mean?
Sure. Think about how we often use global labels to categorize people.
Right.
Genius, disabled, homosexual, and so on.
Yeah.
These labels tend to color our entire perception of the person,
Right.
leading us to make assumptions that may have nothing to do with their actual abilities or character.
Right. We get stuck in those mindsets and fail to see the individual beyond the label. It's like we're looking at a blurry photograph instead of a high-definition image.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
But by making more specific distinctions, we start to break down those stereotypes and see the nuances that make each person unique.
Okay.
For example, instead of seeing someone as simply disabled,
Yeah.
we might see a man with a lame leg or a woman who uses a wheelchair.
Right.
By being more specific, we start to focus on the individual's abilities rather than their perceived limitations.
So it's about moving away from those broad generalizations and approaching each person with fresh eyes and an open mind.
Precisely. And there's fascinating research that supports this idea.
Oh, really?
One study found that children trained to make more specific distinctions,
Okay.
focusing on individual characteristics rather than broad categories,
Okay.
showed less prejudice toward those with disabilities.
Wow. That's amazing. So by practicing mindfulness and cultivating a more nuanced perspective,
Right.
we can actually challenge our own biases
Yes.
and create a more inclusive and equitable world,
Exactly.
both at work and in our personal lives.
Absolutely.
It's like we're upgrading our mental software to see the world in higher resolution.
Exactly. And that higher resolution allows us to see the beauty and complexity of each individual rather than just the blurry outlines of a stereotype.
This is all so fascinating.
Good.
I'm starting to see how these mindfulness principles can really change the way we approach our work and interact with each other.
Yeah.
I'm eager to hear more about how we can put these ideas into practice.
Well, that's a great segue into our next segment. Let's explore some specific techniques for cultivating mindfulness in the workplace
Okay.
and examine how they can impact our productivity, creativity, and overall well-being.
Sounds good. You know, one of the things that really strikes me about this whole concept of mindfulness is that it's not like some exclusive club,
Right.
reserved for yogis or meditation gurus.
Right.
It feels very accessible,
Yeah.
like something we can all integrate into our daily lives,
Absolutely.
even in the middle of like a hectic workday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't have to overhaul your entire routine to start experiencing the benefit.
Oh, okay, that's it to know.
There are so many simple yet effective ways to bring mindfulness into the workplace.
Like what?
Well, one technique is to simply focus on our breath.
Okay, so like taking a few deep breaths when we're feeling stressed.
Exactly.
That's something I already do sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'll admit it's usually like a reaction to feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
rather than a proactive practice.
Sure. That's a great starting point, and it makes perfect sense to use it as a stress reliever. Yeah.
But we can also incorporate mindful breathing into our regular workday more intentionally.
Okay, how so?
For example, try taking a few conscious breaths before jumping into a meeting or tackling a challenging task.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, just to kind of like center yourself.
I can see how that would help to center us and bring our attention to the present moment
Exactly.
instead of carrying the baggage of the previous meeting
Right.
or the anxieties about the next item on the to-do list.
Right.
We're creating a mental space to focus on what's right in front of us.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of our breath, we also become more attuned to our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations.
Okay.
This heightened awareness allows us to choose how we respond to situations more skillfully,
Okay.
rather than just reacting on autopilot.
It's like creating that pause button we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
That space between stimulus and response.
Yes.
It gives us the power to choose a more thoughtful and intentional course of action.
Yeah, I like that. Another powerful mindfulness technique is to cultivate gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude at work.
Yeah.
I can see how that might be helpful in our personal lives.
Mhm.
But how does that apply to the often stressful and demanding environment of work?
It's about intentionally shifting our focus from what's wrong or what's lacking to what's going well and what we appreciate.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It could be something as simple as acknowledging a colleague's helpful contribution,
Okay.
appreciating the opportunity to learn and grow in our role,
Yeah.
or even just being thankful for a smooth commute that morning.
I like that. It's so easy to get bogged down in negativity, especially when deadlines are looming and the pressure is on.
Absolutely.
Consciously choosing to focus on gratitude, even for those small wins, feels like a powerful way to shift that mindset.
It really is. And those small expressions of gratitude can have a ripple effect, creating a more positive and supportive workplace culture.
Okay, I like it. Now, something else I've been thinking about is the role of mindfulness in decision-making.
Decision making.
Yeah. Earlier, we talked about embracing uncertainty,
Right?
but I'm curious, how can mindfulness help us make more effective choices,
Sure.
especially when we're facing complex situations with limited information?
One key aspect is developing what's called meta-awareness.
Meta-awareness.
Yeah, the ability to observe our own thought processes without getting swept away by them.
Okay, so instead of just blindly following our gut instincts
Right.
or getting stuck in habitual patterns of thinking,
Right.
we're encouraged to take a step back
Yeah.
and examine our assumptions, our
Identify.
biases,
Exactly.
and those sometimes sneaky emotional undercurrents that might be influencing our decisions.
Exactly. Mindfulness helps us to notice those limiting beliefs or emotional attachments that might be clouding our judgment.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah.
I can think of times when I've made decisions based more on fear or ego
All right.
than on what was truly the best course of action. Especially when the stakes are high, it's so easy to let those emotions hijack the decision-making process.
That's very insightful, and it's something we all experience from time to time.
Yeah,
But by bringing that mindful awareness to the process,
right.
we can make choices that are more aligned with our values and long-term goals.
So it's about slowing down, taking that pause, that breath,
Right.
and really considering the potential consequences of our choices from a place of clarity and intention.
Exactly.
It's not about eliminating emotions altogether,
Right.
but about becoming aware of how they might be influencing us and then making a conscious choice about how much weight we want to give them.
That's a great way to put it. And it's important to remember that mindfulness isn't about achieving some perfect state of calm
Right.
or eliminating all distractions. It's about learning to work with the inevitable challenges and uncertainties of life in a more skillful and compassionate way.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming some kind of Zen master who never experiences stress or frustration. It's about developing the tools to navigate those challenges with more grace and resilience.
Precisely. And as we cultivate mindfulness in the workplace,
Yeah,
we might find that it extends beyond our professional lives, positively impacting our relationships, our health, and our overall sense of well-being.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's not about compartmentalizing mindfulness as just a work tool.
Right.
It's about integrating it into our whole being so that it becomes a way of life that benefits us in all areas.
Absolutely. And speaking of transferring skills, our discussion of mindfulness at work actually connects to some fascinating insights about how we perceive and interact with people who are different from us.
You're talking about that decreasing prejudice by increasing discrimination concept, right?
Exactly.
I'm still wrapping my head around that one, to be honest.
I know it sounds a bit paradoxical at first glance, but remember, the idea isn't about promoting actual discrimination in the harmful sense.
Yeah.
It's about challenging those overly broad, stereotypical categories we often use to define people.
So instead of seeing someone simply as disabled or elderly,
Right.
we're encouraged to look beyond the label
Exactly.
and recognize their unique qualities and abilities. It's about seeing the individual, not the stereotype.
Exactly. And this relates to mindfulness because it's about cultivating a more nuanced and discerning perspective.
Can you give an example of how that might play out in a real-world work situation?
Sure. Think about a common workplace scenario, assigning tasks to a team.
Okay.
Let's say you have a team member who uses a wheelchair.
Okay.
A mindless approach might lead you to assume that this person is incapable of handling tasks that require physical mobility.
Right. We might fall back on those stereotypical assumptions without even realizing it.
Exactly. But a mindful approach would involve recognizing that each person has a unique set of abilities and limitations,
Right.
regardless of their physical characteristics.
So instead of making assumptions based on the wheelchair,
Right.
we would take the time to understand the individual's strengths and weaknesses
Exactly.
and assign tasks accordingly.
Precisely. And this applies to any difference, not just physical disabilities.
Right.
It could be differences in cultural background, communication styles, or even just personality types.
That's a powerful reminder that everyone has something valuable to contribute.
Absolutely.
And it's our job as leaders and colleagues to create an environment where those diverse perspectives are welcomed and valued.
Absolutely. And that's where mindfulness can be incredibly transformative.
Hmm.
By cultivating a more present, attentive, and non-judgmental way of being,
Okay.
we can challenge our own biases and create a more inclusive and equitable workplace for everyone.
This is all so insightful. I'm starting to see how mindfulness isn't just about personal well-being. It's about creating a better world.
It really is.
One interaction, one decision, one mindful moment at a time.
It really is. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of mindfulness, the power of uncertainty.
The power of uncertainty.
Yeah. We often view uncertainty as something to be feared or avoided,
Right.
but it can actually be a catalyst for growth and innovation.
I'm intrigued by that idea.
Yeah,
How can uncertainty be a positive force?
sure.
Especially in a work environment where there's often so much pressure to have all the answers
Right.
and to project an image of confidence and control.
Well, when we're certain about everything, we tend to get stuck in our ways.
Okay.
We stop questioning, we stop exploring, and we stop learning.
Oh.
But when we embrace uncertainty,
Yeah,
we open ourselves up to new possibilities.
I see.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
So it's about stepping outside of our comfort zones and being willing to experiment and take risks,
Exactly.
even if we're not entirely sure what the outcome will be.
Exactly. And this relates to mindfulness because it's about being present with the unknown
Okay.
without clinging to fixed outcomes.
Can you give an example of how that might play out in a real work setting?
Sure. Imagine you're leading a team tasked with developing a new product.
Okay.
A mindless approach might involve rigidly sticking to a predetermined plan, even if it's not working or if new information emerges that challenges the initial assumptions.
Right. We might be so attached to our initial idea
Yeah.
that we fail to see other potentially better options.
Right.
Or we might be so afraid of failure that we avoid taking risks altogether.
Exactly. But a mindful approach would involve recognizing that the path to innovation is rarely linear.
Okay.
It's about being willing to pivot, adapt,
Yeah,
and embrace the inevitable detours and roadblocks along the way.
I see.
It's about seeing those unexpected challenges as opportunities for learning and growth, rather than as threats to our ego or our sense of control.
So it's about being flexible,
Yeah.
being adaptable,
Yeah.
and being open to new information and feedback.
Exactly.
Even if it means letting go of our cherished ideas
Right.
or admitting that we were wrong.
Precisely. And that openness to feedback is another key aspect of mindfulness.
So I'm curious to hear more about how mindfulness impacts the way we give and receive feedback.
Well, when we're mindful, we're more receptive to feedback from others. We're less defensive, less likely to take things personally, and more open to learning and growing from the experience.
That makes a lot of sense. It's so easy to get defensive when we receive criticism, even if it's well-intentioned.
Right.
But if we can approach those conversations with a more mindful and open-minded attitude,
Exactly.
we're more likely to extract the valuable nuggets of wisdom that can help us improve.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just receiving feedback. Mindfulness also helps us to give feedback in a more skillful and compassionate way.
So instead of just criticizing or pointing out flaws,
Right.
we approach feedback as an opportunity for growth and development
Yes.
for both the giver and the receiver.
Exactly. And when we approach feedback from a place of mindfulness, it becomes less threatening and more constructive.
Okay.
It's not about tearing someone down,
Right.
but about helping them to see their blind spots
Yeah.
and to develop their strengths. It's about fostering a culture of continuous learning and improvement, both individually and collectively.
This is all so incredibly valuable. I'm starting to see how mindfulness can really transform the way we work,
Yeah.
the way we lead, and the way we interact with each other. It's
Yeah.
not just about personal well-being. It's about creating a more mindful, compassionate, and effective workplace for everyone.
It really can. And one of the most powerful things about mindfulness is that it's a practice, not a destination.
Okay.
It's something we can cultivate and strengthen over time with consistent effort.
So it's not about achieving some sort of perfect state of mindfulness.
Right.
It's about continually showing up and doing the work,
Exactly.
just like any other skill we want to develop.
Exactly. And even small incremental changes can make a big difference over time.
Right.
Think of it like building a muscle.
Yeah,
The more we practice mindfulness,
Yeah.
the stronger and more resilient our mindfulness muscle becomes.
Now, I'm also curious about the connection between mindfulness and creativity.
Creativity.
Yeah, we talked earlier about how mindfulness can foster innovation,
Right.
but how does it actually boost our creative thinking?
Sure.
Is there a link between those quiet moments of mindful awareness
Yeah,
and those aha moments of creative insight?
that's a great question. And yes, there's a definite connection.
Okay.
One key aspect is that mindfulness helps us to quiet the mental chatter that often gets in the way of creative flow.
Oh, okay.
When we're constantly bombarded with thoughts, worries, and distractions,
Right.
it's hard to access that deeper well of creative inspiration.
I see.
It's like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a hurricane.
So it's about creating space for those aha moments to emerge,
Exactly.
like clearing the mental clutter so that the creative spark can ignite.
Exactly. Mindfulness helps us to cultivate a state of mental stillness and clarity,
Okay.
where creative insights can bubble up more easily.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
But honestly, my mind feels like it's always racing, especially at work.
Sure.
How do we actually create that mental stillness amidst all the demands and distractions of a busy workday?
It takes practice,
Right.
but mindfulness techniques like meditation and mindful breathing can be incredibly effective in calming the mind and training our attention.
Okay.
Even just a few minutes a day can make a difference.
So it's not about stopping our thoughts altogether.
Right.
It's about learning to observe them without getting carried away by them.
Exactly.
Like watching clouds drift by in the sky without feeling the need to grab onto them or analyze their shape.
Precisely. And as we become more adept at observing our thoughts,
Yeah.
we gain more control over our attention and focus.
Okay.
This allows us to direct our creative energy more effectively
Uh-huh.
and to tap into those deeper reserves of inspiration.
That makes sense. When we're more present and focused,
Mm.
we're less likely to get bogged down in distractions or self-doubt.
Right.
We're able to access that state of flow where creativity feels effortless and joyful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And mindfulness also helps to cultivate a sense of curiosity and openness,
Okay.
which are essential ingredients for creativity.
So I'm curious to hear more about the link between mindfulness and those qualities.
Well, when we're mindful, we're less likely to cling to rigid beliefs or assumptions.
Okay.
We're more open to exploring different perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
experimenting with new ideas, and embracing the unknown.
So it's about challenging those limiting beliefs
Exactly.
and embracing the possibility that there might be a better way of doing things.
Yes.
Even if it feels counterintuitive or unconventional.
Exactly. And that willingness to experiment and to embrace the possibility of failure is essential for creative breakthroughs.
Right.
Think of all the great innovators throughout history.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid to challenge the status quo, to
Right.
try new things, and to risk failure in pursuit of their vision.
This is all so inspiring. I'm starting to see how mindfulness can really unlock our creative potential
Yeah.
and help us to come up with truly innovative solutions.
Absolutely.
It's not just about working harder or thinking smarter.
Right.
It's about cultivating a mindset that allows creativity to flow more freely and effortlessly.
It's a powerful tool, and one that's becoming increasingly important in today's fast-paced and constantly evolving work environment.
Now, we've talked a lot about the benefits of mindfulness for individuals,
Uh-huh.
but I'm also curious about its impact on teams and organizations as a whole.
There.
Can you speak to that? What happens when mindfulness is embraced as a core value within a team or organization?
Of course. When mindfulness is embedded into the culture of a team or organization,
Yeah.
it can create a ripple effect of positive change.
What kinds of changes? Give me some specifics.
Well, we often see improvements in communication,
Okay.
increased collaboration,
Yeah.
reduced conflict, and a greater sense of trust and respect among team members.
That sounds like a dream workplace. Sign me up.
It really can be. Mindfulness helps to create a more compassionate and understanding work environment
Okay.
where people feel safe to speak their minds,
Yeah.
share ideas,
Oh,
and
yeah.
support each other even when there are disagreements.
And how do we actually cultivate that kind of mindfulness culture within a team or organization? So is
Sure.
it just about offering meditation classes
Yeah.
or encouraging people to take mindfulness breaks?
Yeah.
Or is there something more to it?
Those can be helpful starting points, but it
Yeah.
really starts with leadership.
Okay.
Leaders who embody mindfulness principles,
Yeah.
like open communication,
Okay.
non-judgmental listening,
Uh-huh.
and a willingness to learn and grow.
Okay.
Create a space for others to do the same.
So it's about setting the tone from the top down.
Exactly.
It's about leaders walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And it's not just about words, it's about actions.
Okay.
Leaders who prioritize mindfulness practices,
Yeah.
like incorporating mindful moments into meetings,
Okay.
offering mindfulness training programs,
Right.
and creating space for reflection and feedback.
Right.
Send a clear message that this is a value that's truly embraced, not just a trendy buzzword.
That makes sense. It's about creating a culture where mindfulness is woven into the fabric of everyday work life.
Right, exactly.
Not just relegated to a once-a-week meditation session.
Right.
It's about creating a space where people feel supported, valued, and empowered to bring their whole selves to work.
Precisely.
Right.
And when that happens, we see some pretty incredible results.
Like what?
Increased productivity, enhanced creativity,
Right.
reduced stress,
Yeah.
and a more engaged and fulfilled workforce.
This is all so inspiring. I'm starting to see how mindfulness can be a game changer, not just for individuals,
Right.
but for entire organizations.
Absolutely.
It's about creating a more human-centered workplace
Yeah,
where people feel valued, supported, and empowered to do their best work.
exactly. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of mindfulness, the power of self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah,
How does that relate to work?
sure.
I can see how it might be important in our personal lives,
Uh-huh.
but does it really have a place in the fast-paced, performance-driven world of work?
Absolutely. We often hold ourselves to incredibly high standards in the workplace,
Right.
and when we inevitably fall short,
Yeah.
we tend to be very self-critical.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle of self-blame and perfectionism,
Is.
especially when we're striving to succeed in a competitive work environment.
It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
But self-compassion offers a powerful antidote to that.
Okay.
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a good friend or colleague.
So instead of beating ourselves up when we make a mistake,
Right.
we acknowledge our human fallibility and offer ourselves words of encouragement and support. It's about being our own best cheerleader,
Yeah.
even when we stumble or fall short.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this can be incredibly liberating.
Oh.
When we're kinder to ourselves,
Yeah.
we're more likely to take risks, try new things,
Uh-huh.
and bounce back from setbacks more quickly and gracefully.
Good.
We're also more likely to be more compassionate and understanding towards others, creating a ripple effect of positivity.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Self-compassion creates a ripple effect of positivity. It's
Yeah.
like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
If we're constantly depleting ourselves with self-criticism, we have nothing left to offer others.
Exactly.
But when we refill our own cups with self-compassion, we have an abundance of kindness and understanding to share.
Beautifully said. And it's not just about being nice to ourselves. It's about recognizing that we're all worthy of love and compassion,
Right.
regardless of our accomplishments or failures.
I love that. It's about shifting our focus
Yeah.
from self-judgment to self-acceptance.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing that we're all perfectly imperfect, and that's okay.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective can be incredibly transformative.
This is all so incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how mindfulness can really revolutionize the way we approach work,
Uh-huh.
the way we relate to ourselves, and the way we interact with the world around us.
It really can. And it all starts with that first step,
Yeah.
that willingness to pause, to pay attention. Yeah.
And to cultivate a more present and mindful way of being.
And that's something we can all do,
Exactly.
regardless of our job title,
Right.
our experience level, or our personality type.
Exactly.
Mindfulness is a gift we can give ourselves.
Absolutely.
And in doing so, we create a ripple effect of positive change that extends far beyond ourselves.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a bit and explore a topic that's often overlooked in discussions of mindfulness, the power of play.
Play. I love that we don't often think about play in the context of work,
Right.
but I'm intrigued to hear more about how it connects to mindfulness.
Okay.
Isn't play something that's supposed to be fun and lighthearted,
Exactly.
not serious and goal-oriented like work?
Exactly. And that's precisely why it's so important to bring more play into our work lives.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about it this way. When we're truly engaged in play,
Yeah.
we're fully present in the moment.
Right.
We're not worried about the past or the future.
Right.
We're not caught up in self-judgment or self-doubt.
Right. We're simply absorbed in the joy of the experience.
That's a beautiful description of play.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of all those mental burdens.
Right.
And just allowing ourselves to be fully immersed in the activity.
Exactly.
Whether it's building a Lego tower with our kids jamming on the guitar
Yeah.
or trying out a new recipe.
Exactly. And that state of being fully present,
Right.
that's the essence of mindfulness.
So incorporating play into our work lives can actually be a way to cultivate mindfulness.
Absolutely.
I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually do that in a work environment that's often so focused on productivity and efficiency?
It doesn't have to be anything elaborate or time-consuming.
Okay.
It could be something as simple as taking a 5-minute break to do a crossword puzzle,
Okay.
listen to a favorite song,
Yeah.
or have a playful conversation with a colleague.
I love that. It's about finding those little moments of joy and lightness throughout the day.
Exactly.
Those moments that remind us that work doesn't have to be all serious and stressful all the time.
Exactly. And those moments can have a profound impact on our mood, our energy levels, and our overall well-being.
They can also spark creativity and innovation.
Absolutely.
When we allow ourselves to play, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and ways of thinking.
Precisely. And that's why play is so important for fostering a mindful workplace culture.
So I'm curious to hear more about how playfulness can transform a workplace.
Well, when we create a work environment that encourages playfulness and experimentation,
Yeah.
we send a message that it's okay to take risks,
Okay.
to make mistakes,
Yep.
and to learn from our failures.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah,
It's about creating a culture of psychological safety. where
Exactly.
people feel supported and empowered to try new things, even if they're not sure they'll succeed.
Exactly. And when people feel safe to play,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be engaged, motivated, and creative.
Okay.
They're also more likely to be resilient in the face of challenges and setbacks.
This is also inspiring.
Good.
I'm starting to see how playfulness and mindfulness go hand in hand.
They do.
They're both about cultivating a more present, joyful, and open-minded way of being.
Beautifully said. And that's why it's so important to make time for play,
Right.
not just in our personal lives, but
Yeah.
also in our work lives.
I completely agree.
Good.
Now let's shift gears a bit and explore how mindfulness can help us navigate the challenges of technology in the workplace.
That's a great topic. Technology is a double-edged sword.
Right.
It can be an incredible tool for productivity and connection,
Yeah.
but it can also be a source of distraction and stress.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that.
I know.
I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with emails, notifications,
Right.
and demands for my attention. It's hard to stay focused and present when there are so many digital distractions vying for my attention.
It's a challenge we all face in today's hyper-connected world.
Yeah.
But mindfulness can help us to develop a healthier and more balanced relationship with technology.
Give me some practical tips.
Yeah.
How can I actually use mindfulness to tame the technology beast and reclaim my focus and sanity?
Well, mindfulness helps us to become more aware of our technology habits.
Okay.
Are we constantly checking our phones,
Mhm.
even when we're in the middle of a conversation or an important task?
Okay.
Are we mindlessly scrolling through social media,
Yeah.
even when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed?
Right.
Are we letting technology dictate our schedule and our priorities
Right.
rather than the other way around?
Oh, I'm guilty of all of the above.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into those patterns without even realizing how much they're draining our time and energy.
It's so common these days. But mindfulness helps us to step back and to become more conscious of the choices we're making.
So it's about recognizing those patterns of behavior
Yes.
and then choosing to make different choices.
Yes.
It's about taking back control of our technology use
Right.
rather than letting it control us.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean we have to give up technology altogether. It's
Yeah.
about using technology more mindfully and intentionally rather than letting it use us.
Can you give some examples of what that might look like in practice? I'm all about actionable strategies.
Sure, one simple strategy is to set aside specific times for checking email and social media,
Okay.
rather than constantly interrupting our workflow to see what's new.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
I often feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole with my inbox,
Exactly.
constantly reacting to whatever pops up.
Yeah,
It's exhausting.
it really is. But by setting boundaries around our technology use,
Yeah.
we can regain control of our time and attention.
And that frees us up to be more present and focused on the tasks that truly matter,
Exactly.
the tasks that align with our values and our goals.
Exactly. Another helpful strategy is to create technology-free zones
Okay.
in our homes and workplaces.
Like a no-phone policy at the dinner table.
Exactly.
That's something I've been trying to implement with my family.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much more connected and present we feel when we're not constantly glancing at our screens.
That's a great example. It could also be designating certain areas of the office as quiet zones.
Where people can work without distractions from phones, emails,
Right.
or chat notifications.
I love that. It's about creating spaces where we can truly unplug and recharge, both mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we do that,
Yeah.
we create the conditions for mindfulness to flourish.
This is all so incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
I'm feeling so inspired to create a healthier and more mindful relationship with technology, both for myself and for my team.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Be patient with yourself,
Uh-huh.
experiment with different strategies,
Right.
and find what works best for you and your unique circumstances.
That's great advice. It's about finding that balance between leveraging the power of technology and protecting our own well-being and peace of mind.
Precisely. And as we cultivate mindfulness in our relationship with technology,
Yeah.
we create a ripple effect of positive change that extends far beyond ourselves.
So I'm curious to hear more about that ripple effect.
Well, when we model mindful technology,
We inspire others to do the same.
Okay.
We create a culture where it's okay to disconnect,
Yeah.
to be present,
Right.
and to prioritize human connection over digital distraction.
That's a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
It's about creating a world where technology serves humanity rather than the other way around.
Exactly. And that's a world worth striving for.
This has been such an incredible conversation. I'm feeling so grateful for your insights and wisdom.
The pleasure is all mine. And remember, the journey of mindfulness is ongoing.
Right.
Keep exploring, keep practicing,
Okay.
and keep sharing your insights with others.
I will.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to touch on one final topic. The role of mindfulness in cultivating a sense of purpose and meaning in our work lives.
That's a great question. So many people feel disconnected from their work, like they're just going through the motions, collecting a paycheck,
Right.
but not really feeling fulfilled or passionate about what they're doing.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and to lose sight of the bigger picture. We get so focused on, crossing items off our to-do lists
Yes.
that we forget to ask ourselves those big questions.
Right.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
What impact do I want to make?
Yeah.
What legacy do I want to leave behind?
You hit the nail on the head. But mindfulness can help us to reconnect with our values
Okay.
and to find a deeper sense of purpose in what we do,
Right.
even if we're not in our dream job.
So give me some specifics. I'm eager to hear how mindfulness can help us bridge that gap between the daily grind and a more fulfilling work experience.
Well, mindfulness helps us to pay attention to what truly matters to us.
Yeah.
It helps us to identify our passions, our strengths, and our values.
So it's about taking that time for self-reflection
Yes,
and really asking ourselves those big questions. What am I passionate about?
exactly.
What do I want to contribute to the world? What kind of impact do I want to have on others?
Exactly. And once we have a clearer sense of our values and purpose, we can start to align our work with those deeper aspirations.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot where our talents, our passions,
Right.
and our work intersects. It's about finding that sense of alignment where work feels less like a chore and more like a calling.
Precisely. And mindfulness can help us to stay connected to that sense of purpose, even when we're facing challenges or setbacks.
That's so important. It's easy to get discouraged when things aren't going our way. When projects fail, when deadlines are missed, or when we're dealing with difficult people. How can mindfulness help us stay the course, even when the going gets tough?
Mindfulness helps us to cultivate resilience, to remember why we're doing this work in the first place, and to find joy and meaning in the journey, even when the destination feels far away.
This is all so inspiring.
Yeah.
I'm feeling so motivated to bring more purpose and intention into my own work life. It's not about magically transforming my job into some kind of utopian dream,
Right.
but about finding those moments of meaning and connection that make the work feel worthwhile, even on the challenging days.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, the journey of finding your purpose is ongoing.
Okay.
Be patient with yourself, keep exploring, and trust that you'll find your way.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom with me today. This has been an incredibly enriching conversation.
The pleasure was all mine. And remember, mindfulness is a practice, not a destination.
Right.
Keep showing up, keep learning, and keep sharing your light with the world.
I will. Now, before we wrap up completely, I want to circle back to one of the concepts we touched on earlier, the idea of decreasing prejudice by increasing discrimination.
Okay.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that actually works in practice. It just sounds so contradictory.
I understand. It's a concept that can feel counterintuitive at first, but it's incredibly powerful once you grasp it.
Can you give an example to illustrate how it works? I'm a big fan of concrete examples.
Sure. Let's imagine you're a hiring manager and you're reviewing resumes for a job opening.
Okay.
A mindless approach might lead you to make quick judgments based on superficial factors like a candidate's name, their age, or their alma mater.
Right. We might unconsciously fall back on those stereotypical assumptions without even realizing it. It's like our brains are wired to categorize and label things.
Exactly.
But those categories can be so limiting and misleading.
Exactly. But a mindful approach would involve taking a more discerning look at each candidate's qualifications, skills, and experience beyond those surface-level characteristics.
So it's about looking beyond those initial impressions and really taking the time to understand each individual's unique strengths and potential. It's about seeing the person behind the resume, not just the bullet points on a piece of paper.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where increasing discrimination comes in.
Okay.
It's not about discriminating against anyone based on prejudice. It's about discriminating between candidates based on a more nuanced and informed understanding of their qualifications.
That makes a lot more sense.
Good.
It's about being more discerning, more thoughtful, and more intentional in our decision-making process.
Exactly.
It's about taking the time to really see each person as an individual, not just a representative of a particular group or category.
Exactly. And this principle applies to so many areas of life, not just hiring decisions.
Right.
It's about challenging those broad, stereotypical categories we often use to define people, and instead seeing each individual with fresh eyes and an open mind.
That's a beautiful reminder.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that Everyone has something valuable to contribute, and it's our job to create a space where those diverse perspectives and talents can shine.
Beautifully said. And that's the essence of mindfulness, seeing the world with fresh eyes, with an open heart, and with a willingness to embrace the beauty and complexity of each individual we encounter.
This has been such a wonderful deep dive.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, keep practicing mindfulness, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.